You'll recall that I shared with you last week, and in fact leading up to the season of Lent, that my plan was to create a theme around what are you afraid of? Would that series ever end? It became really clear, particularly as I met with the women at the retreat 2 weeks ago, that given the world in which we live, we actually spend far too much time thinking about what we're afraid of, going down rabbit holes from which there is no return. And so we had a change of plan halfway through, decided that during the time that we spent together in community during this season, we wouldn't so much talk about what we were afraid of, but if we were going to do that, we would also consider what the antidote to that fear is within this tradition. Last week we talked about community, about time at the table, and how somehow at the table, sharing food with friends, laughter, a drink or two, all of those things that keep us up at night seem to go back to where they should be, somewhere out there. Today the antidote is music, and how could we have known that when we chose this theme that Tom and Conrad would be with us this morning. Once again, an incredible antidote to the fears that challenge us. So I'm going to read from you excerpts from two passages. The first is from 1 Samuel 16. It's a familiar passage. You'll recall one of the earlier kings of Israel, King Saul, had issues with anxiety and depression that kept him up at night, and there was a young boy that he sought out who he heard could play the harp like an angel. And so his servants, whenever he was wrestling with those sleepless nights or those demons that confounded him, his people went and brought to him a shepherd boy whose music healed his soul. Whenever an evil spirit bothered Saul, David would play his harp. Saul would relax and feel better, and the evil spirit would go away. And then an excerpt from the book of Ephesians. I'm going to read a couple of these sentences twice because I think they're really powerful. Act like people with good sense, and not like fools. These are evil times, so make every minute count. These are evil times, so make every minute count. Don't be stupid. Instead, find out what God wants you to do. Don't destroy yourself with distractions, but let the Spirit fill your life. When you meet together, sing songs, hymns, and spiritual songs as you praise the Spirit with all of your heart. I was grateful to catch Tapestry last Sunday afternoon on CBC with host Mary Hines. It's always a treat. Last Sunday she was interviewing Jeremy Rifkin, who probably shouldn't have been a surprise to me, was picking up exactly the same things that I had been reflecting on that morning. In his book called The End of Work, he provides an analysis of the implications of the growing worldwide unemployment crisis, which he is telling us will be the new normal. Most compelling for me about the conversation was Rifkin's perspective in regards to how the present realities around the future of work, or more truthfully, the future of unemployment, might actually pave the way for a healthier global community and a healthier individual. In short, his argument goes like this. Thanks to the Protestant work ethic, thanks to John Calvin, the founder of Presbyterianism, the foundation of success in the West is your identity as an employed person. Your job. And then your salary. And then everything else that comes underneath that, your ability to communicate, accumulate stuff, et cetera, et cetera. In this culture, if for any reason you do not work or cannot work, well, you're a bit of a failure, aren't you? I can remember being a child as young as 10 years old and being asked what I wanted to be when I grew up. With an assumption until that happened, I was not sufficiently human. But I knew the answer to that question because I had been groomed properly. I was going to get myself an education and a job, and then I would be something when I grew up. Our language gives it away. How about this one? Consider the expression, I'm only a housewife. I'm just staying at home with the kids. Or this one. It's a joke, I'll try and pull it off. It took me a while last night. Dad, when I grow up, I want to be an artist. Sorry, son, you can't be both. Murray McLaughlin, who I saw in Belleville 2 weeks ago, regaled us with the story of telling his parents that he wanted to go to art school. Well, that was about the last time his dad spoke to him until he won a Grammy or something. Like, art school? Are you a man or what? Anyway, we know the anxiety that sets in if our children tell us that they want to be an artist or a musician or a house husband. Gosh, where's that going to get them? But things have shifted, and we need to shift. There will not be a job for everyone, and that is a frightening thought in a culture whose definition of success is complete financial self-sufficiency. But Rifkin challenges us, and challenges, as we should challenge as well, the definition of personal success. Because that definition of personal success has also perpetuated a culture of depression and anxiety and addiction and fear. And furthermore, it has completely distorted our understanding of what it means to be truly human. The world says, you work, and therefore you are. Compare that to Jesus, who said, consider the lilies of the field. They aren't uptight and worried every day about where their next meal will come from. Wow. How did we end up so far away from that vision of grace and trust? And so what is the invitation? Well, Rifkin shares the perspective of the writer of Ephesians. It's time, he says, to remember what is really valuable and to make your decisions in life accordingly. It's time to remember, and maybe some of you need to remind your children if you're past making those decisions, or your grandchildren. There's a huge task for elders in this culture. That life is bigger than a job. That peace of mind is worth as much, maybe more, than a paycheck. That it is the nature of our relationships with one another and with the creation that will sustain us at the end of the day. And that a daily diet that includes art and music and beauty are required. They're not optional. They're required for us to be truly human. I'll repeat that because my friend just walked in and she's going to completely agree with this, all right? So Judith, this one's for you. It's time we remember that a daily diet that includes art and music and beauty are required for us, not optional credits, required for us to be fully human. And we know that. We know it. We know what is most important at the end of the day. We know that life in the Spirit is far more rich and satisfying in the end than life in the rat race. But we also know that it is so easy, given our programming, to fall into those old ruts of fear and anxiety. And so we need to fortify ourselves with the kinds of spiritual practices that reconnect us to the mystery that we call God. We need to connect with spiritual practices that will restore within us the mind of Christ. That is, I might add, very different from the mind of John Calvin that most of us were shaped in. I think we've always known that music provides us with that way back to a place where we can see what is true, what is important, what is life-giving. Music can bring us back from both the personal and the cultural abyss. So in conversations at some break during some of us being at the pub on Friday, because if you want to enter the mystery we call God, you really got to get to the Waring House when Tom and Conrad are there. We all know that's where the mystery resides. So I've asked them to play a couple of pieces, just as an illustration of the power of music to connect us with both values on the one hand and people on the other that are life-giving and sustaining. So the first song I've asked them to play is a folk song by American Stephen Foster. I don't know why it speaks to me. I guess maybe during Lent, maybe during a time when there are so many in our world who really are just struggling. This song is an invitation to remember them, to remember all of those who are less fortunate.